Good evening, everyone. I'm Alan Miller. I'm co-founder of the Together Association, and I'm very pleased tonight to be working with Reconnecting Oxford in this incredible, beautiful hall. I want to quickly just show everyone in the audience because we've got this beautiful hall, which I'll talk about for a bit in just a second. But just to show everyone what we're doing here, we're going to be talking about taking back democracy and freeing our streets in this historic, beautiful city of Oxford. What we're going to do, everyone, if you're going to hold up the placards, we're going to take a look. Let's see it. Hold them up. And what are we going to do? We're going to take back democracy. Take back democracy. And what are we going to do with the streets in Oxford? Fantastic. Well, on that great start, live, welcome everyone around the world. In 1729, a small group of students began meeting in Oxford to pray, study and express their faith here. This was called a Holy Club, and it was led by brothers John and Charles Wesley. It was just the beginning of a movement that in the end led to the Methodist Church, which today counts 70 million people around the world. Now, it's 60 years later, in fact, that Immanuel Kant said, "Dare to know things through reason, dare to be wise." And it was in the late 1760s that Thomas Paine spent time demonstrating his courage in insisting on democratic rights and freedom in common sense, and of course changed the course of the world, contributing significantly to the American Revolution. So as we meet here today for a public town hall style debate in Oxford, it's notable that elected representatives, councillors on Oxfordshire County Council and Oxford City Council generally, but not entirely, have turned down the opportunity to address local residents and businesses. We invited several times Liz Effman, Andrew Gant and Duncan Enright. You know, Duncan, the bus gates are going to happen regardless, Enright, as well as councillors Brown and Louise Upton and others. Now, it seems that councillors need a reminder of their role in a democratic society, that constituents are to be engaged with properly, openly, honestly and transparently, that residents and businesses have their concerns listened to, that traffic plans are part of how a city and county develop and need to have the residents, the public, us, at the heart of it. Sadly, the councillors are so willing to promote the line that residents and businesses that challenge low traffic neighbourhoods and the bus gate system are part of a so-called 15 or 20 minute neighbourhood plan. And yes, it is part of that plan. You only have to look at the wording on Oxfordshire's travel plan, which states it unequivocally, that somehow anyone who challenges these things or asks questions is a conspiracy theorist, or even some going as far and irresponsibly using the term fascist. Well, tonight, ladies and gentlemen, with this room full of local residents from around the city and Oxfordshire, we shall have the debate and also talk about what we can all do about it together. We reject the name calling and smears as cowardly attempts to sideline and suffocate and not engage in the actual issues that the majority of the public, decent residents, businesses in Oxford and Oxfordshire and up and down the country want to have and are insisting on. We've seen that recently with the by-election, as it happens, in Littlemore, and it was a fantastic result. Michael Evans didn't actually win in the end, but you can see what happens in a short period of time when people begin to stand independently, and that should be a signal as May approaches and for the general elections. Now, if anyone needs to answer about any kind of conspiracy, surely it's the council and some of the councillors. As Oxford Mail has been reporting on, and the Freedom of Information revelations about suppressing a report on traffic impacts that they apparently did not want to come out prior to the consultation, makes shocking reading today. So for all those courageously speaking up, well done. As Arthur Miller's The Crucible so painfully and hauntingly represents, creating a witch hunt-like environment is dangerous for everyone. As we meet today, we will show what it means when we say, take back democracy together. We can take comfort that when we stand together, when we make the case for reconnecting citizens, the public, residents, businesses, and us all, we can make a difference. We can make change, like the residents of Ealing that forced the ending of low traffic neighbourhoods there. But we need to make sure we have as many join locally regionally and nationally as possible, and free our streets together. So, tonight we have some fantastic speakers, and we shall discuss the next steps and how things can be dealt with across Oxford and more broadly. So, I'm going to introduce the panel and just say a little bit about how we're going to do this tonight. So I'm going to go to the panel. Each panelist is going to speak for 6 or 7 minutes. We're then going to have a bit of a discussion about the things that they've said. Then we'll come out to you guys to have a bit of a chat with any questions or points. I'll remind you, because you all know this anyway, but we like civilized, civil debate and discussion. It means you can say pretty much anything, but we do it in a way that means we can engage. So we're not into the screeching. But we would love to hear from anyone who doesn't agree. We've invited some of the cyclist campaigner groups and others that vehemently disagree, but they actually responded they didn't want to attend. But, you know, we always want to hear alternative views. It's very, very important to hear people argue the virtues or the merits as they see it of their arguments. We need more of that, not less. These days that's called being a conspiracist, but there you go. So first of all, we'll be speaking this evening will be Clinton Pugh. So Clint is an entrepreneur that has been an avid fan and, has been an avid entrepreneur and created a destination hospitality provider on Cowley Road in Oxford for over 30 years. He's been very vocal about low traffic neighbourhoods and is currently being pursued by Oxford City Council for his billboard, which many of you might have seen, while trying to keep 3 businesses open. But Clint, in many ways, has demonstrated the kind of courage that's required, along with other retailers and people in hospitality up and down Cowley Road and elsewhere, for actually speaking up and speaking out when that can have consequences. We also have Jamila Azad, who has lived in East Oxford for 50 years and has served as an Oxford City and Oxfordshire County Councillor for St Clement's and Temple Cowley wards for many years. Then we have Richard Parnham, who's one of the founding members of Reconnecting Oxford. Reconnecting Oxford is a residents group that campaigns for evidence-based transport policies in Oxford. Next to me is John Skinner, who's a long-term East Oxford resident and local anti-fascist campaigner who stood as an independent for St Mary's Ward in the 2022 City Council election. John worked for many years at the local hospital, managing all the information technology systems. We were going to have as well Sadia Mustafa Awan, who has lived in Oxford all her life and, as well as having 2 young children, works as a senior lawyer. She worked for former MP Andrew Smith for 10 years and now feels politically homeless after the undemocratic impositions of the low traffic neighbourhoods. Unfortunately, Sadia has been taken ill this evening, but she wanted to pass on her message of encouragement and support to everyone here, and hopefully we'll have her back at another event soon. But we do have Shadow Highways County Councillor Liam Walker, who will, for most of you won't need any introduction, but you'll know who he is. So please give the panelists a warm round of applause. And I am going to hand over to Clint to speak first.
Hi, good evening everybody. As Alan explained, I've run restaurants on the Cowley Road for over 30 years. There? Yeah. As Alan explained, I own 3 restaurants and I have shop premises on the Cowley Road. I've opened many restaurants around Oxford. I've seen over the years since I've been in Oxford, Oxford City Council and County Council always trying to supposedly improve the roads and the way the system works. And unfortunately, everything they seem to do, apart from Friedwide Square, that does actually work. It never used to work when I had a Cafe Coco down there, and the only time the traffic used to flow was when the traffic lights didn't work. You know, the traffic moved. But anyway, I'm going to talk a little bit about the Cowley Road and the effects on St Clement's and with the road closures between Cowley Road and Iffley Road. Now, you may not all realise, but 1.2 miles of roads were closed. It's caused a huge problem for residents. Of course, there are some people that agree with it. I personally have indicated to the county council that I thought it would have been a bit clever idea if they've only closed a third of them, and let's see what happens and see that it works. But now we've discovered that obviously it's causing a detrimental effect on the huge quantity of small independent businesses, all of them guaranteeing their rents. No one owns freeholds there apart from a few people. The reality is these poor people will probably go bust. When I first arrived on the Cowley Road 32 years ago, as most people have been around Oxford a long time will realise how derelict and run down the area was. I took it upon myself as a project to try and help and improve and change the Cowley Road. I even went up the far end of the Cowley Road and opened what is now Cafe Bar, which still remains. I also developed the Cafe Tarifa as the Oxford Organic Burger Company. Unfortunately, 3 months before Northern Rock went bust, the bank. Deliberately, because I knew that there was a nightclub bar that wanted to go there, and I knew it had a devastating effect on residents and all the people around there. I'm campaigning, as you know, to try and speak up for the small business people that are actually very badly affected. Most of them English as a second language. They daren't say anything. I understand. If I lived in another country, I wouldn't probably complain if I didn't feel it was my home first of all. But these poor people, you look at the desperate in the look in their eyes. Most of them can't afford to get involved because they need to spend all their time running their businesses, and sadly, you can just see gradually the demise of their businesses. Not one councillor, I haven't found one business that any councillors have actually bothered to come and have a word with them. I've only had one councillor come to me after we'd been to County Hall and all stood up passionately trying to get them to change what they were doing. And that was Duncan Enrights when he came just before Christmas. I did ask him, could he have a whip round, ask them all, the councillors, for a whip round to help me pay the staff's wages. He went bright red, and unfortunately he didn't reach into his pocket. It's a real shame, the fact that they didn't ask our opinions. We can all see from what's happening and coming out in the press right now, they had no intention of asking our opinions. And all those people, all the citizens that bothered to wade their way through those forms that they asked us to fill in, their surveys with stupid questions in there to not be able to say everything, but be able to say that we don't agree with what you're doing, has all been for a total waste of time. You know, the point that I made with the sign that I put up on the Cowley Road, which I've put signs up there for probably 28 years now. I've always advertised there, so the reality for Oxford City Council to now demand I take it down because they don't like the sign is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, how can you advertise on the side of a building for 26, 27 years and then be told that you don't have permission to be able to put adverts there? They didn't care about the sign I had up for a year and a half saying, welcome back to the sunny side of Oxford. Thank you very much for everyone at the NHS for all your work during COVID, and here's 20% discount. They didn't care about that. They didn't care about the fact that I had a sign up there for over 2.5, 3 years saying that we reckoned it was the best burger in Oxford we were selling. They didn't care about that. But somehow, now they found some little legal loophole, so they reckon, and so they will. I will actually go to court, and let's see what the judge thinks. I mean, I think it's a shocking. I think the sad thing, it seems to have now been pushed through completely, that it seems as if it potentially is irreversible. Now, if it is irreversible, the damage that the County Council have done and will continually do, God knows what's going to happen if the bus gates come in, because I can't see the point of coming into Oxford. Most people I speak to, and don't forget, I do, obviously, because I've put my neck up above the wall, parapet wall, I do get some negative comments, but most people come up to me in all sorts of weird places to say thank you very much for standing up and saying something. I've always hated bullies. When I was at school, I always went up against bullies. I can't stand them, and the council have acted in such a bullying fashion. It's not acceptable. I personally think they should all resign, personally, but I don't see we're likely to achieve that. Yeah, and apart from the fact that most of them don't even live in Oxford, which is great because they don't even have to suffer the consequences of their actions. But anyway, I'll pass this on to somebody else now. But thank you all for coming and supporting us.
Thank you very much, Clint. You can take it. And next up, we're going to have Jamila. Thank you.
Dear friends, good morning. My name is Jamila Azad. I have lived in this beautiful city of Oxford for nearly 55 years. and have served as city councillor and a county councillor for many years. In fact, I only retired in 2020. My father was a British Indian Army officer. When he got retired, he brought his 7 children to Oxford. Since then, we are all living in Oxford, including 4th generation of my father. I am a member of many charities, voluntary organizations. I worked as a teacher, translator, women development worker, social and health worker with children and families. My husband worked as community and diversity officer with Thames Valley Police. We know local community very well. Nothing in recent memory has caused as much division as distress in our East Oxford community than the undemocratic imposition of LTNs in residential areas, and I would say it's about 40 bullards within where residents are living in East Oxford. That we have seen our once unite community of East Oxford divided with neighbors turning against neighbors, friends turning against friends, and residents being human bollard. Oxford used to be the very model of successful and united multicultural community in the Oxford, in UK. It wasn't perfect, as I would say, but the LTNs have torn and divided our community. We know from living here for so many decades that gridlock, conjunctions, accidents, pollution has increased greatly because of LTNs, and further bus gates are being proposed. Accessional journeys that we have to make by car that would take 10 minutes now takes 30 to 40 minutes. Buses are late due to LTNs. And gridlock in St. Clements, Plain Roundabout, Iffley Road, Cowley Road, we see buses everywhere stuck. We have witnessed with our own eyes emergency services getting stuck in LTNs and reduce traffic jam on or having to reverse down the road when confronted with LTN and leaving vulnerable people waiting for them. As an Asian Muslim woman, I know that our religious communities have been ignored in consultation. We know so many of our community that no longer sadly visit the mosque in East Oxford due to blocking the roads, also many vital local businesses within our areas of East Oxford. We are suffering or closing down businesses, like our friend has said, on Cowley Road. Care workers are not coming, they are delayed. Teachers are leaving and leaving their jobs because they can't come to work on time. LTNs may have benefited a small number of residents, not for the rest of us. It's making residents late for hospital appointments, school children are late, elderly social care is delayed, bad polluted air, which is bad for health. LTNs are bad for emergency services, local community, jobs, schools, disabled, businesses, and vulnerables. I fully support combating climate change and clean air to breathe out, and LTN's road closure policies of city and county council have clearly failing, and there are a lot of problems with local residents within the community, especially second language speakers as well. They don't understand what's going on. There are other measures and alternatives to reduce traffic. We need cheaper public transport, segregated and safe cycling lanes for cyclists, and safe footpath of pedestrians. When I was a county councillor, I asked for a cycle lane on Cowley Road from Moglen Road to police station, Temple Road. And if you come and see how badly those are designed, instead of making these cycle routes safe, they are really dangerous for cyclists on Cowley Road. We say no to NPR cameras in this critical moment when working class families are already suffering. We are standing up to freedom and our city, our choice. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Jamila. And now, Richard.
Thank you, everybody. I'm going to be the bearer of bad news because I'm going to tell you what's coming next. And I've got a next slide, please, so I'm going to continue up here. So, the Central Oxfordshire Travel Plan is basically Oxfordshire County Council's blueprint for what happens next. In theory, it's all kittens and rainbows because some of those ideas are lovely, including comprehensive cycle networks, beautifully designed streets. It categorically is nothing of the sort. Because we asked, would you mind awfully opening up that beautiful route between Iffley Road to across Christchurch Meadow to St Aldate's, which is access only for university, and the council went, absolutely not. So basically they're refusing to open up routes, but they are happy to punish residents. Next slide, please. So basically there's three big proposals in the works. The traffic filters, which we probably all know about. The workplace parking levy, which is basically a staff car park tax of £600 per parking space per year. That's coming down the tracks. And the expanded zero emission zone, which is nothing of the sort because you can still drive in, you just basically pay to pollute. Next slide, please. And there's a whole bunch more stuff coming as well. There's more controlled parking zones. If you haven't got one, you're going to get one. A review of eligibility of CPZ permits. If you've got permits already, they're going to be taken away. Reduction and removal of city centre parking. They've got the rise in quite a few city centre car parks. They're going to remove off-street car parking. They've got the rise on St Giles and possibly the Cowley Road, the parking that's still there. And review of parking charges for on-street parking. I think we know which way that's going. Jericho is 15 quid for 3 hours currently. You can pretty much bet the rest of the city is going to get the same. So, traffic filters. Next slide, please. Like, I live near Marston Ferry Road. This idea, it illustrates how bonkers the policy is. It's a quiet country road with a dedicated cycle track and walking route, and they basically want to shut it off. It's going to instead push traffic past basically the run at John Radcliffe Hospital, past houses, past shops. It's basically going to ruin bus routes, ruin lives, instead of going a country road. It's madness. Next slide, please. What we might have heard, what you might have seen in the papers, basically, they knew that the traffic filters would have a bad impact around the ring road, and the council sat on the information during the entire consultation period. It's all coming out now, but they were sitting on it throughout the consultation. Next slide, please. And some of the numbers are really bad. So if you guys go anywhere near the kind of Wolvercut roundabout on your way in and out of town, the traffic's going to go down from about 17 miles an hour to 6 miles an hour, according to the secret modelling they didn't release during the consultation. It's also bad, next slide please, on Botley Road. Basically around the Seacourt Tower, they're looking at about 10% increase all day, every day, basically around the Seacourt Park and Ride. So basically they're going to screw up Park and Ride as well as inner city bus routes. So basically it's going to be absolutely terrible, especially people using Park and Ride. Next slide, please. Workplace parking levy. One bit of good news about the workplace parking levy, it's not a tax to go shopping. It only affects workplaces. Unfortunately, the workplaces it's going to hit are schools, hospitals, and charities. Next slide, please. I've looked at some of the numbers because the council couldn't be bothered. The John Radcliffe Hospital is facing £1 million annual bill. Oxfam, £150,000. Swan School, £25,000. Basically a teaching assistant. The question is, who's going to end up paying for this? Is it going to be the employer, or are they going to start passing the cost on to anybody who parks at work? £600 a year per parking space. Next slide, please. The other mad thing about the workplace parking levy, it's supposed to reduce city centre traffic, but pretty much the only places, apart from schools and hospitals, are businesses literally on the ring road, inside of the ring road. You can see a picture there, Knight's law firm, it's literally the approach road to the ring road. So how it's going to reduce city centre pollution and traffic, Lord only knows. That's how mad these schemes are. Zero emission zone. Next slide, please. The zero emission zone is currently a very small part of the centre of Oxford. It's going to be expanded massively. It's going to cost for most drivers driving a regular petrol car £4 a day initially, going up to £8 a day later on. So basically you're thinking about £1,000 a year to drive across town. If you're driving on a typical no, going up to £8. Just to stress, even if you have a pass for your traffic filters, you're still going to have to pay the zero emission fee. So basically, you're going to get a pass and a tax. It's double whammy. Next slide, please. There are some exemptions, but they're being phased out in the current zone from 2025 for businesses and blue badge holders, 2020-30 for residents. Must stress, if you're not in this in accordance, you're going to get taxed in the start. So basically, the exemptions be around for a bit, but not for long. Next slide, please. Kind of point, well, is it all worth it? Is it going to reduce pollution? No, because basically they're going to clobber particularly petrol car drivers who contribute 5%, no more, of pollution, compared with up to 70% for buses. So it's not going to cut pollution because it's literally targeting the wrong people. So, next slide, please. There's one unfortunate department. Funny enough, where I used to work, it's the law faculty. It's on the traffic filters route. It's on the zero emission zone, and it's got a big car park. So if you happen to work at the law faculty or the English faculty, basically you're going to get stuffed 3 ways. Sorry guys, maybe you should do a digital review. Next slide, please. And just to remind you, there's a whole bunch more stuff in terms of if you haven't got a CBZ scheme already, you're going to get one. If you live on a bus route and you've got parked there, assume it's going to be taken away. They're going to remove visitor parking. They're going to remove city centre car parks and clobber you for on-street parking. So that's what's coming down the tracks. Sorry, guys.
Lots and lots for discussion and concern there. Thank you very much, Richard. Now, John.
Hello. Thank you for coming in such a horrible day. I want to focus on democracy. Next slide, please. The LTNs were introduced as part of an emergency traffic order, as Richard said. They were introduced without consultation. They got the designs done by consultants. They didn't talk to anybody at a local level. They didn't let anybody have any input. So they were created undemocratically, introduced through emergency measures, and the city and the council grasped this Tory bung with both hands. It was Boris Johnson who was giving out the money to do this, and the city and the council, both non-Tory administrations, decided they would take the money and run. Busgates and ZEZs are coming. Richard's explained how bad they are. Next slide, please. So, there was some consultation happened. After Cowley and Littlemore went in, there was a consultation document. People voted on it, or they entered stuff on it. The majority were against it. What did the council do? They ignored it. In East Oxford, there was a consultation. That was done before they were actually introduced. The consultation went against the council. What did the council do? They ignored it. They've had a consultation now in East Oxford after the consultation. This time they've got a different reaction. They've suppressed the result. They're refusing to give people the result of the consultation. Richard has done, other people have done freedom of information requests, and they're refusing to respond to them, despite their having a legal requirement to do that. Next slide, please. They then had a consultation on the bus gates. The consultation was rigged. They were asking you about ethnicity, about your gender, about what you felt about certain things. So most of the questions were completely irrelevant to the actual consultation. They had 4 questions where you could respond. The first one was about the people who were affected. 3,364 people responded, a significant response. 95% of them, 95% of the comments were against. Only 4 were in favour, 4%. That was 5,839 comments were against. The second question, 5,818 people responded, and that was on the benefits. There, 92% were against, 8% were in favour. Question 3 was about the challenges. 4,973 people responded with 8,500 comments. Again, 90% were against, less than 10% were in favour. Sorry. It's absolutely ridiculous for them to say they've got public consent on the bus gates. the number of people who were objecting was so many times more than the people who were in favour. They've got no democratic mandate, but they're completely ignoring it. Next slide, please. So, we've got a complete lack of democracy. We've got a lack of looking at evidence. You know, they're not looking at the evidence that pollution is increasing. They're not looking at the evidence before their eyes. It's an absolute travesty. They've got evidence to say that Cowley and Littlemore, there's been no increase in active travel. So they were saying that people would cycle more, they would walk more, and they would scoot more, although I can't see how getting on one of those scooters is active travel. It seems to be completely passive to me. But having said that, they've got no evidence that what they've done is working. But they're not interested. They say it's a trial, but they don't publish what the criteria for the trial are. So it's not a trial, it's just an assumption. And when they get the results, they fix them. Next slide, please. We all know there are real life problems out of this. You know, people are losing their jobs or they can't get to work. If you live out of Oxford and you want to get to the John Radcliffe, you can't do it very easily now. You've got to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning to get there. And when you get there, you can't park anyway because they've taken away most of the car parking spaces. So it's absolutely impossible for lots of people to get to work. I did a debate at Cheney School and one of the teachers there said she takes an hour and a half now to get back to where she lives. She won't stay there for very long. She'll go to a school where, you know, she can actually get to work and go back. If people want to pick up their children and do things after work, you know, if you're a nurse at the, and you work in the hospitals or you're a care assistant and you've got to go and do things, you can't do it in this city because of what they've done. So we know that this doesn't work. Buses don't work. It doesn't work because you've shut all the side streets and there's no resilience. That was completely predictable. We said that was going to happen, and it has happened. The pollution's increased. It's dangerous in some areas. So Holloway, it's breaching the legal requirements. And that's directly because of the council's action. But they don't do anything about it. There's a huge democratic deficit. Next slide, please. They want to drive us back to where we were 2 centuries ago, the horse and cart. Certainly they don't want any cars. They probably don't want the horse poo, but never mind. LTNs are clearly not working, but we have had suggestions, you know, as to what might work, and those suggestions need to be consulted on. I'm not arrogant enough to know what's going to work, but it's fairly clear that we can have things that will make a difference. You know, I believe in, you know, slower traffic in the side streets. I believe in listening to residents, to listening to businesses, finding out what they want, making sure that they prosper. I think there's a good suggestion that they've done in Cambridge where they are banning undergraduate cars. You know, they've got a policy which says if they bring cars, if students bring cars, if they bring cars and they need them because they're disabled or they've got any particular needs, that's fine. They get registered. But if they bring them within the boundaries of Cambridge, they get fined, and they're quite happy to fine the rest of us all the time. And it's really interesting when you have the vacation, we don't have traffic problems in East Oxford. You know, it just doesn't happen in August. It doesn't happen when the students are away. So that would be one action that would work, and it does work in other cities, or it certainly works in Cambridge, or they have policies in Cambridge that say that it works. I think that we could consider some of the things they've done in South, like the actions in South Fulham, where they've got a system where residents can go anywhere, they can bring their families anywhere, they can have carers to come in, they can have builders to come in, they don't get charged for any of it, but they do have a charge for people who are travelling around if they're not entitled to. That might be a system that works. I don't know, it does need consultation, but you know, we can have things that might make things worse. The biggest thing that would improve traffic in Oxford would be to have a bus service that was cheap and worked, or free and worked. If you remember Ken Livingstone, that made a difference in London. You know, and the reason the bus system doesn't work is because the council has shut the side streets. You know, it's blindingly obvious. I am not saying we should open everything all the time. We do need to make schools safe. We do need to make sure traffic goes slowly. We need to consult with people to have safer side streets that work for people, and that there may be there's got to be some compromise, but you can't have everything as it is now, because the city is completely divisive. I can't talk to some of people who live in some areas because they are so pro shutting of the streets that you can't actually reason with them, and it's a real crying shame that that's the situation. Finally, we can do things about this. I've been called a racist climate change denier who's a conspiracy theorist. I'm none of those things. I'm rational, reasonable, etc., etc., etc. But the arguments that are being used against us are essentially to demonize us. It's a McCarthy-like witch hunt. We can counter that. I was around when the poll tax was there. And the poll tax was beaten by civil resistance, and people weren't intimidated by Thatcher calling us left-wing extremists. We ignored all of that then. We need to ignore all the name shouting now. We need to build a movement. We need to link with others. We need to link with the people who are against the ULEZ expansion in London, because that's essentially the same thing. We want to stop councillors trying to control us, dividing our city both physically and intellectually, and making it a have and have-nots type of arena. So we need to build a movement, and I think the movement starts here. And so thank you very much for coming.
Thank you, John. And now to you, Liam, please.
Thank you. Can you hear me all right at the back? Brace yourselves, ladies and gentlemen. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Liam Walker. I'm a county councillor. I'm not from Oxford, so I'm one of these councillors not from the city, but boy, do I completely get what you guys are so frustrated about. I just want to start by saying thank you for coming out tonight. As I was driving over, it was pouring down with rain, and I kind of thought no one would be here, so I'm impressed to see the hall full of people. So I was the former cabinet member for highways. I got removed from office, so I have a little bit of experience of what I can say tonight and what will probably get me into trouble. So I'll try and stay on the fence, if you'll forgive me. Firstly, put your hand up if you took part in the consultation on the Central Oxford Travel Plan or Busgate. Okay, pretty much most of the room. Well, firstly, you deserve a medal for navigating that consultation. It took me about 45 minutes to navigate. Quite why they want to know certain questions, I do not know. And my second point is I want to apologise because, as this week has revealed, you took part, I'm afraid, in a sham consultation. It didn't matter how much time you spent on that consultation. It didn't matter how many opinions you gave. It didn't matter whether you objected or you supported. Because as we now know, the decision was made 8 months ago. They already knew what they were going to do. So I'm sorry on behalf of my colleagues and fellow councillors. We're not all bad apples. Some of us are just trying to do good. Many of you would have seen that this week we took the step to send a letter to our new Chief Executive of Oxford County Council calling for a full investigation because this new information, if I'm completely honest, I've been a county councillor since 2017. I am embarrassed when I talk to other people across the country and say I'm from Oxfordshire. I have never known the council to be so unpopular than it is now. And this is echoing across the whole of Oxfordshire. I'm councillor in West Oxfordshire. Christ, have you seen the Jeremy Clarkson season of the second farm? I mean, that is how not to be a council and work with farming communities. So this isn't just a unique issue for Oxford. In Witney, and I did it as cabinet member through the COVID, again, back to the point of the government giving councils money. We closed the high street to allow for the wider footpaths for social distancing. Makes sense in my mind. We were all in the same boat. We had to do that. The then Lib Dem cabinet member, we lost the election. That's quite common. You all know that, what happened there. Then carried on. They did a full consultation. 36 out of 37 of the high street businesses did not support that closure staying in place. Over 50% of the people who took part in that consultation did not approve of the scheme. What do you reckon the Lib Dem cabinet member for highways did? He kept it in place. So it didn't matter what their opinion was. It didn't matter that they took the time to take part in that consultation. He still pressed ahead with it. That is not democracy, ladies and gentlemen. You do not elect councillors like me to make our own decisions. You elect councillors to speak on the behalf of the people who elect them, the people that pay in their council tax our allowances. Some of those cabinet members are on a right stink. Duncan M. Wright, the deputy leader of West Oxford District Council, was also on the district council. He's on a hell of a whack being a full-time councillor, making these decisions and not representing the people of Oxford because he's from Witney. Sorry, I'll just get that point across. It's the same with, I could go on for hours. It's the same with 20 mile an hour. We've now got a council spending 8 million quid changing road signs in villages that didn't have a speeding problem, didn't have any fatalities. It doesn't matter what you say in the consultation because they're putting them in place anyway, and they can't even do that properly. And, as I pointed out to the cabinet member, if you do object to the 20 mile an hour zones, the officers would put in their report that any objection you would mark down as irrelevant. How can a view be irrelevant just because you object? If you don't support or whether you object, your view is not irrelevant. On the topic of free park and ride, I'm glad it was mentioned. I put a motion to the council last year. This is something I'm quite passionate about. And this is something I promise you, if we get back in County Hall, you will have free park and ride. I promise you that. Is actually, why is this money not being reinvested in public transport? They're hammering motorists. The ZEZ has made £700,000 of fines. It's free roads in Oxfordshire. What do you think they're going to be making when they roll it out across the whole of Oxford City? They need to reinvest that money back into public transport, and in my mind, that's making the free park and ride fee. So I'll keep pushing that. What else have I got here? In my view, and I'm going to be completely frank, because why not? They don't deserve to be councillors. They don't deserve to speak for Oxfordshire. Like I said, I'm completely embarrassed when I speak to colleagues across the country when you say you're from Oxfordshire. They roll their eyes, not only about vegan meals, but all this nonsense going on across the county. Interesting this morning, I think we've got the BBC Oxford here. My colleague Eddie Reeves, the leader of our group, actually spoke about bus filters. And nobody from the council, Andrew Gant, nobody showed up. They couldn't even be bothered to defend the policy that they're going to impose. That, ladies and gentlemen, says it all in my mind. A few months ago, and Richard was there too, I did a similar talk on Blackbird Leys. Now, you know, I'll be frank, I was quite nervous being a Conservative going into Blackbird Leys, but the people were lovely, warm and welcoming to me. And there was now I get emails pretty much every week about what's going on in Oxford, despite it not being my area. But this story stuck with me. There was a lady who, because of the LTNs now in Oxford, she's late home from work every single day that she can't even put her own children to bed. So she now takes Friday off work so she can walk them to school and pick them up. That is not right. That is not fair. And that is not acceptable at all. We've got. Thank you. Yeah, please clap. We've clearly got a council in place that is hell-bent on hammering motorists. It doesn't matter, even if you've got an environmentally friendly car, they are going to squeeze every single penny. As Richard quite rightly touched on, the parking charges are going up. That's going to get better because actually the county council is taking over parking enforcement from April for the rest of Oxfordshire. So places like Witney, where the Conservatives there have put free parking in place. If you now park on the high street, we used to have a bit of a soft touch policy. You know, you've got 5 minutes to pick up and drop off. They're now going to have county enforcement teams in place, bringing in more revenue so they can spend it here in the city, I'm afraid, to more anti-car measures. I think I've made my point quite clear, and for those of you that don't, please follow me on Twitter. I'm regularly ranting about the current mess, because generally I'm embarrassed. I never used to speak in this sort of conduct because the councils used to be focused on delivering services. Councils are now focused on funding pet projects so they can make it look good in their election leaflets. That is not what you do to run a council. I'll just end, we're talking a lot about democracy, and it's a point I make at all these sorts of events. You know, democracy does matter, voting does matter, and your opinion does matter. And the key to this is in May 25. We're only at the halfway mark now of these guys running County Hall. I'm going grey. 2 years ago I was not grey. They are stressing everybody out, so I completely empathise with you. We're at the halfway mark. In 2 years' time, right, and I don't want to make this too political. Whatever your politics, please go out and vote. And I don't care who you vote for. Don't vote for them. Go out, either vote for somebody else who's against all these schemes, or go and spoil your ballot, because we need to send them a message. The only way we can send a message is at the ballot box. Look at that by-election only last week. Labour were bussing them into the city because they thought they were going to lose it, and they almost did. So please, go and vote. Thank you.
Right, so I'm going to just ask each panelist a question, and then we're going to come out to you guys. We're going to have a bit of a chat here, and then I'm going to come out to you guys. So Jamila, first of all, I wanted to come to you because in this discussion of the 15 and 20-minute neighbourhoods, I mean, it sounds quite reasonable, right? Who wouldn't, you know, at one level, who wouldn't want to have something like loads of nice things around you? Obviously, the fact that they're mandating certain behaviour is not acceptable. But in places like East Oxford, as I understand it, you don't have the kind of facilities that would be there within 15-minute walk anyway, even if you did that. And even when we do have them, things like GPs, it would be nice if you could get to see them. I mean, how are people seeing that in East Oxford, you know?
As I said before in my speech, there is quite a lot of multicultural society. Many languages are spoken within East Oxford, in schools, in other places such as doctor surgeries, and especially also Cowley Road is so famous. We used to have East Oxford Carnival just to show people around county or other cities how beautiful this East Oxford is, with a lot of culture, with a lot of different languages, a lot of different food, and that was very popular. And I wonder how we were going to do that with these 40 bullards everywhere. And my extended family lives in East Oxford. Their children are married, and they live round Oxford or round Oxford county. And when they can't visit them because they got children going to school, picking them up and doing shopping for them. And really, why they chose Cowley Road, I can't understand. Why East Oxford? Why not Summertown? Why not Abingdon? Why not Whitney? Why East Oxford when there are working people living there? And they are already suffering with housing problem, health problem, and with this LTN blocking their roads and not letting them go here and there. And taxi drivers are living in East Oxford for a long time, and they are earning their living. And I do think that they need to think why working class families suffered in East Oxford.
Thank you. Clint, I'm going to come to you because Jamila's spoken very compellingly, actually, about the divisions. We're once a much more multicultural society, but the divisions around like low traffic neighbourhoods, what that's meant. You spent 3 decades helping make somewhere a destination hub. We've seen so many of the videos come from some of your contemporaries that people have got retail and hospitality there from all around the world, right? It makes it such an interesting place. But it is very concerning, isn't it? Not just what already is here, but what Richard was pointing out and what John was talking about, the future alleged trials, but the future plans that it makes not only Oxford will be unaffordable, but everyone will be being priced out for just trying to come here. I mean, what are the prospects from you as an entrepreneur and the idea of loving where you are? What does that mean for a place like Oxford if this isn't stopped?
Well, I think all business people, anyone here, we all, I know it was very difficult during COVID for normal people, but for businesses, the way I felt, I remember phoning friends and family and said, I felt like I was standing in front of a cliff waiting to be pushed. And the anxiety levels were horrendous. I phoned an insolvency practitioner, a friend of mine, straight away to say, shall I just throw the towel in now? That was before the LTNs were rolled out. That was before the ridiculous, insane war by Russia on Ukraine. That was before inflation. That was before the effects of COVID kicked in. Don't forget, we're all still paying back the 50,000 bounce back loans. I'm sure most little businesses down the Cowley Road have a 50,000 bounce back loan, most of which central government are not going to get back, I would imagine. I can't imagine who's going to come from North Oxford to East Oxford. How are you going to get there? Are you going to bother? I can't see how the quantity of businesses we have that have relied on people coming from all over the country. I get people coming to my restaurants from all over the country. They're not going to come. Why are they going to come? Why are they going to come to Oxford at all? I can't. You know, obviously the Westgate Centre had disastrous effect on Oxford, again voted through by our councillors, allowed a huge amount of area of industrial land that could have been homes and dealt with the problems of for the homeless and the houses that we desperately need. But we see the only green land, the green belt land that seems to get built on is either owned by the college, the university, or it's owned by Oxford City Council or County Council. You know, it's incredible the fact that there are, if the councils really wanted to do something to try and actually help the flow of cars, why aren't all the properties above shops in the city centre have got people living in them? They're all empty. If you walk down Cornmarket Street and look up, look at Cornmarket now. Look at everything the council have done. They're just destroying the city. Look at Broad Street. I've never seen such an appalling example of supposedly creating a wonderful space. My children, I'm a designer, and I tried to imply to the County Hall some ideas on how to try and deal with the area around. And obviously, I'm very interested in the Cowley Road area because this is where you learn all eggs in one basket when you have 3 restaurants in one place. I don't know how I'm going to survive, let alone I don't know how all the little people are going to survive. They're all scared. You just see it in their eyes. I know I said this earlier, but if you walk and actually talk to them, they're desperate. So when we can't get to Jericho and we can't get to other parts of Oxford, I would imagine the people from the shires just aren't going to bother coming. I said to someone the other day, I'd rather go to Witney and Abingdon, but then after what you said of what's going to go on in Witney, I don't think we'll be wanting to go there because they have a wonderful free car park. Look what the council did at the St Clement's car park. They sold it off. 2.5 years we had, well, apart from the battle we had trying to stop them from developing a site, overdeveloping a site, we told them what would happen. They didn't listen. We had homeless people living under where the car park was. Nothing was done, and then they wonder why people don't want to come. They haven't even bothered to put a sign up saying there's a car park there. There is a deliberate attack on cars, and the fact that they don't care whether they're electric or diesel or whatever, they just do not want cars. And unfortunately, I think you will find the decline of the Cowley Road and that area is just beginning, and I think it will get a lot worse.
Thank you, Clint. I think it's really important, the points you are making about democracy, John, and smearing and the need to work together and unite. And some people have talked a bit about the recent election and a little more. You've been now campaigning for some time about this. You stood yourself. Just as the next period approaches, just some reflections on thoughts on like getting friends, colleagues, neighbours, other people engaged in this, because it can change. We've seen it elsewhere in Ealing, as I said, and other places where this has happened. But some thoughts and reflections on that, if you would.
Well, I think we've got to move from shouting to talking and listening and understanding people's points of view a bit. At the moment, there is no listening from the council. There's no attempt to understand other people's points of view. And the reason I put, some ideas up is that we do need to move forward. What the council are trying to do is bore us into this. They think that nobody's going to do anything. We're just going to wait and get bored and move on to something else. But it's people's lives that are being destroyed, and people want to fight back. And we've got to fight back through, elections. I think that's a really, really good way. We've got to fight back by having more meetings, more campaigns, keeping this issue, right on the top. I think we've got to fight back by looking at the evidence and doing rigorous analysis, as Richard does, around, what is the data that supports this? Because there is no data. There is nothing that says this is a good thing. It's not improving pollution, it's not improving travel, it's not doing any of the things they said it would do. And it's predictable that it's going to make gridlock right around the whole of the county, actually, if they put the bus gates in. So we know this isn't going to work. We do need to keep the campaign up. We do need to work And maybe we need to link with all the campaigns in Bath, in Canterbury, in Cambridge even, in London. You know, we need to get a national movement, and people like Together are part of that. You know, they've really helped in making this, you know, resonating this around the country. And we need to make it so that it's impossible for the government to give out any more grants, you know, that they pay an electoral price. You know, the Secretary of State for Transport should not fund any more LTNs. And if they stop the funding, you know, there wouldn't be any more coming in. You know, that's in the Conservative Party's gift. And we need to make that happen. And we need to carry the campaign on. People should sign up, you know, put your email address. There will be, you know, groups of people. We need to think about people volunteering as candidates. You know, I've never been a candidate before. I went round all of St Mary's twice, knocking on every door, and it was a very interesting experience. It helped keep me fit, and you know, we had to put leaflets out. There was a team behind and doing lots of stuff. But it was a very interesting thing, and it's very revealing to actually listen to people, understand what they're saying, and then try and reflect it back.
Thank you. We're going to come back to some of that. Thank you very much. Liam, active travel. Yeah. No, you got to do it with that. Yeah. Active travel, central government funding. We Together and others have been contacting Mark Harper and the Department for Transport, saying whatever the thought was at the time, right now, hearing from people like Clint, hearing from the guys here, the consequences to small businesses, not just in Oxford. I mean, if you look at Haringey, Middleton Road, if you look at Bath, the Ring of Steel, if you look at many places around the UK, Kings Heath, everyone is talking about colossal losses, closing businesses down. Surely now, the Conservative government must be thinking, and 10 Downing Street and others, this has been a bad move. It needs to stop. And if that umbilical cord can be cut, that would go some distance to stopping it. What do you think? Because it's just interesting that in Haringey and others, then Haringey's got an election coming up. It was actually tonight. And it's the first time that some people who've been lifelong Labour supporters are thinking of voting Conservative, because they're saying in Haringey, Conservatives are saying we'll rip out the LTNs. But there's this kind of contradiction with central government. So just talk a bit about that, please.
Yeah, no, it's a really good point. And look, I don't want to shy away from the fact that, you know, we as a previous administration did fund active travel measures. I think that's a good thing, but it's how that goes about funding that. Now, let me be clear, a lot of this is down to Boris Johnson and Andrew Gilligan, who is his cycling champion, whatever title he had, and government were pumping a lot of money at local authorities off the back of COVID. I use the Whitney High Street as a prime example of that work. But ultimately, the decision was still with local councils. Now, where the government and the Department for Transport have failed on that is actually checking in with councils. How have they spent that money? What's the economic impact assessment? What's the consultation? And how did they carry that on? Now, myself and colleagues have made these points to government, but as you can imagine, certainly over the past year, it's fell on deaf ears. It's not a priority. But I think it's worth highlighting that if councils don't get that money from government, there's nothing to stop them using your taxpayers' money, the money we pay in rates, and I have no doubt that they would do that. Now, I think collectively as a Conservative group, and I can go on the record, I think, with saying this, I hope, but certainly I could make this pledge to you tonight, that if I'm back as Cabinet Member for Highways, which I hope at the next election I am, I categorically will be switching these ANPR cameras off and removing them, as simple as that. I do not believe... And just for clarity for my political opponents, I'm not just saying that because I'm at the front of the room and the exit's over there. That is generally a concern, and I've raised that with my fellow colleagues. And indeed, we have a motion coming to council to reflect the similar concerns that we've talked about tonight. So you're absolutely right. The funding shouldn't keep coming from government. Government need to switch that off. I think there's a lot of other priorities that government can be funding than wooden planters in the middle of the road or ANPR cameras to catch us all out. So I'm glad that point is raised, and I just want to make it clear I don't want to shy away from the fact that the government has got that wrong, and we certainly made that case that they need to go back to the drawing board.
Thank you. Richard, your introduction is kind of terrifying and erudite and articulate, and in a way sort of demonstrates what's happening, I think, in a few places around the country, several places we've been already, is that people like yourself understand the evidence, know what's happened, and the people who are elected representatives, allegedly, who are accountable, don't even know or refuse to engage in these things. Many of them seem ignorant to the consequences, and we've got this kind of restriction by stealth, these impositions by stealth, and you've really convincingly laid out the problems with them. Just in terms of challenging that, and some thoughts as we go on. We're going to come out to the audience, but you've been talking about this for some time, campaigning. Some thoughts about what can be done and how we can address this and change it and tackle it.
So what we really need in our campaign is help, because you wouldn't believe how enormously time-consuming it is to kind of even get information about pollution, which I've been yanking out of the council month by month. You know, there was 1,200 data points which needs to go into a database so I can analyse it, because the council cannot be trusted to analyse its own data properly. So we need to be scrutinising everything. If there's gridlock on your road and they're saying it's fine, we need to find out how we go about it. And we can't trust them. I'll give you an example about what's happening in relation to the LTNs in East Oxford. They're monitoring, allegedly, pollution on Morrill Avenue. They basically, you know that all the cars gather at the bottom of the road. They put the pollution monitoring station right at the top of the furthest point away. It's unbelievable. I mean, on the Cowley LTNs, they claim that traffic fell. We worked out where the sensors were, and they only measured roads that they just turned into cul-de-sacs. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. But the only way you find this stuff out is eyes on the ground. I mean, I spent a lot of time just walking around the streets looking for the monitoring stations going, where are they? I mean, we just need people on the ground doing this. And quite frankly, we need people with Excel, database skills to basically pull these guys up, analyze them, and throw the data back at them, because this is going to be the base of a legal challenge, and we need everyone's help. So anyone with a data background, I'm all ears. Thank you.
Okay. Now, I want to just say as well, at Together, we launched on the basis of allegedly having Freedom Day when the Prime Minister at the time, Boris Johnson, said we're going to have Freedom Day, and by the way, you're going to have vaccine passports, which we thought was quite a contradiction. And then we fought off that, and we worked with many different people around the country, but you can't have this conversation about closures of roads, low traffic neighbourhoods, whether it's the discussion about ULEZ, ANPR cameras and everything, without having a reflection on digital ID and also thinking about some of those things. I mean, if you look at what's happening in the Midlands with the ULEZ charges and the fact that 50% of people aren't paying, Sadiq Khan's making the point in London, well, it will be a lot easier when we can actually just track everything digitally and electronically, the car, the age, your account, and deductions coming straight out rather than people not paying. So the question about surveillance with cameras and digital ID and how that's all linked together is really important. Actually, a consultation has just been going on with the government, but I think we should reflect on that as well, and what the consequences are that of constant surveillance and digital ID. But when I come to some contributions in the audience, what we'll do is we'll take a few from the audience and then we'll come back to the panel and we'll do another round. And we'll do that in the, so basically, if you want to come up, Max is going to help us with the microphone. The guys are here. So if you want to come up to the front and say anything, you can say whatever you want. We love free speech, providing you do it civilly. And one at a time, and then Max is going to hold the mic because the way it works with the recording and everything, that's the way we're going to do it. So you can say who you are and talk to us, and then go for it. And we'll do it questions and points. Thanks.
As a matter of interest, my name is Mick Stott. I created an organisation called the Guardians 300. You may or may not have heard of those, but myself and Professor Dolores Carhill have been in this fight for probably about 3.5 years. We created the World Freedom Alliance because we see the bigger picture. Now, does that make us special? No. What it does do is, at this moment in time, what we see around the country is people are being shown very small pieces of a puzzle. And those pieces of a puzzle, if you don't see the picture on the box when you go to create the jigsaw, they don't make any sense. So we have to contextualise what is going on at the moment. Now, I served in the British Army for 30 years. I'm a 30-year veteran.
And I know when I'm being bullshitted, because we were led into conflicts that we should never have gone into. And of course, it's very easy to be wise after the event. I can tell you now, if we do not stand up as individuals, as people, and we do not show how powerful we really are, and we don't take these people like councillors to task and hold them to task, this is going to get much worse than you could ever imagine without being the voice of doom. Because today it's your car. If it's an electric car, what difference would that make? I can tell you what it's going to be tomorrow. It's going to be you and your family. They will be the things that they will control. Is there a way out of this? There absolutely is. One of the reasons that we are here tonight is to create a contact so that we can now start to show you how powerful you are as people by creating jurors. We want jurors from within this organisation. We want to contact, and we're going to spread this philosophy all the way throughout the country. When I created Guardians 300, we ran 194 programs in 2 months, and we were in lockdown. And we did that to make people understand how sovereign they are and how powerful they are when they stand together. This gentleman here has hit the nail on the head. We don't live in a democracy. If you believe we live in a democracy, you're not actually watching what's going on, and we need to pay attention. So my message today is we will have an answer to this, and it will be about a collective from the people right back to the basics of natural law, where we can nullify their legislation. We want to train you how to do that, and we want to show you exactly how powerful you are when you all stand together. But we must stand together, and we must become sovereign, and we must understand what that equals at the level of our strategies.
Thank you.
The last thing I want to say to you.
Great, thank you.
My name is Anne, and I live in Littlemore Road in Cowley. I didn't know what an LTN was until they dropped at the end of 2 of my roads that are just yards from my house. My grandchildren, who live 4 doors away, have had to give up all of their after-school activities because my daughter just can't get them there. Just this week, I have encountered drug dealers shooting up just round the corner from me in broad daylight when I walked my dog. 2 nights running, last night and the night before, I was woken up by sirens and blue lights flashing with an ambulance trying to get through a blocked road and couldn't do it, so he ran up and down the road with blue lights flashing. I found out afterwards that they were desperately trying to get to a sick baby. The council will tell us that these things are not happening, but we're seeing it, and we're seeing it all of the time. That's what I want to say.
Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Tim. I live in Summertown. Fantastic panel. Thank you very much all for coming. I think we all want to know what we must do after this event, and that's really important. And I just want to pick up on something that's possibly a tiny bit negative. So, gentlemen here, I'll be happy to help you with data analysis. But the sort of thing you're doing, the sort of thing you're doing with data analysis, finding the evidence, if they don't want to listen to the evidence, they're just tying up our time. Yeah, and I'm concerned about that. Similarly, I love the sound of the Conservative man at the end who says he'll switch off the cameras. But the fact is, we know, for example, that in Littlemore, the Conservative candidate, who also said he was against LTNs, unfortunately split the vote. And as people, and this is not this is not really an anti-Conservative rant, but I think we've got to be careful about what we spend our time on. I certainly think putting up people for council and all getting around there and getting them elected, that must work. Legal cases work. But I'm concerned about other things where we're bashing against deaf ears and we're thinking that Conservatives are going to help us. They are in government, they've got an 80-seat majority, and yes, these things are happening all over the country. So you can write to Mark Harper, but is he just going to play it along for another 2 years, by which time we're stuffed?
Great, thank you very much.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Mark Boulay. I'm live in Northway. Thank you very much, everybody. That was really illuminating. I just wanted to touch on one thing that wasn't really mentioned, except, Alan, you were getting towards it at the end there. Let's suppose this all goes ahead and the bus gates come in now, autumn 2024, if the Botley Road works don't overrun, which of course they will. They've talked about there being a system of 100 day passes for residents inside the ring road, of 25 for people coming in from outside other parts of Oxfordshire into the city. Now, I know it's a long way off, but there has been no detail at all of how the County Council proposes to administer that, what they're going to do with the data, What's there going to be? A portal where you register your car with the county council so they can track your bloody journeys? Who the hell do these people think they are? And moreover, you know, if that system comes in, none of us here are fools. We know full well that in the first year, it'll be 100 passes for those of us who live inside the ring road, 25 outside. The following year, oh look, there's still too much traffic. It'll be down to 75, or 10 passes if you're coming in from outside the city. Oh, and maybe we'll charge for them as well. It's dystopian. And I know this as a leading, and I'm not ashamed to say it, a leading anti-lockdown campaigner in this city for the last 3 years. I have seen what these petty little tyrants will do given half an inch, and they've got to be stopped.
Very good. Jeremy? Or Anne? Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. It's good to see so many people out tonight as it's so cold and wet. My name's Laura Soden. I lived in Oxford for 22 years. I'm here tonight to represent the Oxford 21 campaign group. Oxford 21 is a local group set up by and for local residents. Our aims in the Oxford 21 group are to raise awareness of the measures that are going on in Oxford, both proposed and implemented, and to support actions to get these measures stopped. We work with local groups such as Reconnecting Oxford, and also we have connections with other groups. John, you mentioned about having a national movement, and we have connections with Bath, with Canterbury, with Cambridge, and with London and other groups as well. So our aim is to work across with these other cities on the same sorts of measures that are happening. We run weekly campaigns on the streets in Oxford. So we have our yellow board signs that we have at the proposed traffic filter sites or close to those, where we hand out leaflets. This is the leaflet that was on your chair when you came in, and we hand out these leaflets to the motorists as they stop at the lights, and also engage local residents as they are walking along as passers-by, and to have conversations with them, hand out the leaflets, and to find out what they are interested in, what they're concerned about, and to give them information. We are going to introduce some new yellow boards soon to talk about some of the other measures that are happening that Richard mentioned, the workplace parking levy, and also the expansion, the proposed expansion of the zero emission zone. So please look at our leaflet. We have a website as well, which we have clear referenced information on there, and we have local and recent updates of news. So please go on there to look at that information. Please take a few more leaflets. There are some at the front as you come in, and hand those out to colleagues and neighbours and friends and family. We also put a pink postcard on your chairs as you came through, and also there are some more at the front. Please fill in a message to the local council if you'd like to write something, and put it in the post box as you leave. When we have a substantial number of these, we would like to hand these into the council. It's just at the front as you came in. So if you can hand in a message, no, it's just a little box, and then you can just, you can just put them in, and then we will hand them to the council when we have enough. Thank you. We also have a petition. There's a QR code on the front, at the front as you come in, if you'd like to sign the petition directly, or again, it's on the website, which you can see on here. And we've conducted this petition in conjunction with Reconnecting Oxford, so it's a joint effort. There are many things that we can do, so please have a look at our website and our leaflet. Please get involved and get engaged. The more we have getting involved and engaged, the better that is. So have a look at our website. We will keep that updated. Follow us on Twitter if you're on Twitter. And also, if you'd like to get involved in the outreach activities, please contact us. We have a contact email on the website. As I said, we're out every week, and it would be great to have more people involved in leafleting and letting people know, raising awareness of what is going on. So
great, thank you. So thank you very much.
It's time to free our streets and take back democracy. It's our city, our choice. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeremy.
Good evening, everybody. My views, I think, have been quite well publicised in the local paper. I'm part of a coordination of bringing together businesses, professional bodies, under the umbrella of OBAG, Oxford High Street Association, ROCS, etc., etc. We'd put our heads above the parapet here and decided that we would try and raise money to investigate whether we could enact a judicial review. Our aim was to raise £80,000. I think where have we got to, Peter? About 53, 55,000. So we're well on the way to raising. It's quite a chunky amount of money, and barristers cost a lot of money. So if you're interested in contributing or passing the message on to others that you think might be able to contribute, then that would be great. I've been running businesses, don't worry, I won't be speaking too long here. I've been running businesses in this city since 1976, and I'm going to press the rewind button and try and, some of you will remember Oxford in 76, 80s, 85, mid-80s. It was a vibrant city. There were single yellow lines in the evening. You didn't get these incentivized traffic wardens walking around hiding in doorways. I witnessed something the other day with the Old Bank Hotel. Some Swedish tourists were in Oxford in a car, I don't know what, a rare occurrence, and this warden spotted the car. They weren't sure whether it was London-type parking rules or what it was. Ducked into a doorway, waited for them to park, came out, gave them a ticket. And the same thing happened to some lovely old lady who was going to the church, coming into Oxford just on a Sunday. There's a mood that's changed in this city. It was vibrant originally when I first opened my first business, and that's gone. Look at Corn Market, look at the High Street, look at Broad Street, look at Queen Street. He made a good point, obviously Clint made a good point about Westgate sucking retail out of the historical part of the city, but it's looking sad. And this is only going to exacerbate the problem. People are already saying, well, they always have been saying Oxford's difficult to get into. You can't park, I'll go somewhere else. This is just going to what's the word I'm thinking of? It's going to add to this, and Oxford the brand Oxford is being damaged by councillors voted in by rural Oxfordshire without them realising what they're voting in, and that come the elections, we must somehow get the message out to the provinces of Oxford. I don't go any further, it's all to do with Oxford County Council. And these people who are just, Oxfordshire, yeah, thanks for that. These people must be put even more on the back foot. I was asked by Duncan Enright, I'm going to mention his name, from Whitney. He said, can I come and talk to you? This wasn't very long ago. And he said, I'll come into the Old Bank quad and we'll have a chat. And he came in half an hour late, I have to say, and he said, I said to him, "What? You walked all the way from the other side of Oxford where the county council offices are." I said, "Tell me, what did you see in Oxford when you walked through to get to me in the High Street?" I said, "What did you see in Queen Street, Corn Market, where's that Clarendon Centre that's closed down?" And he said, "Oh, nothing. It's just a lot of people around. There's a lot of footfall. Footfall's a load of rubbish. These footfall statistics." And he didn't see any of it. He didn't see the Oxford city centre, which is not. It's a shadow of its former self. And then I said to him, "You're in Whitney. How come you know so much about Oxford? How come you think you can legislate for what's happening in city centre?" He said, "I lived in Oxford." I said, "When?" He said, "Oh, I was a student at Brasenose." Yeah, a student at Brasenose. What would he have seen of the city centre as a student in Brasenose College? I mean, this is a sham. These people are not fit to legislate for us. And there's no joy either in these people. I'm going to generalise now. There's no joy. It's all divide Oxford, division. make us miserable. We went through the pandemic. No, that's not enough. Let's ram a few more restrictions on people. So we're going for the GoFundMe. We'll try and find out some chinks in that armor. I hope we will. It's beginning to emerge that we are going to. If you have any evidence of that would help us, I can't go through it now, but if you have any evidence to do with emails or how councils have conspired to introduce measures which they have misled us, we'd like to know about it, because we want some hard evidence, and it's got to be there. I've said enough.
Great, thank you, Jeremy. Whilst the next person's coming up, can I just see an indication of how many people are members of Together here? Hands up. And then how many people are on Together's signatories who got emails about this event? Just hands up. Put them right up so I can see you, please. Great. Okay, cool. I'm going to come back to you. Yeah, great. So we're going to take these guys here, and then I'm going to come back to the panel. Well, in a minute, we're going to do it. So if you no, that's okay. Well, if I bet you don't get email, so that's okay. So we'll come back to you. That's fine. That's a good point. I was just seeing who did get some in here. All right. So this gentleman, and then we're going to come out to the rest. Thanks.
Good evening, everybody. My name's Mick Haynes. I'm a campaign master campaigner. I've been an Oxford City Councillor for 10 years, independent councillor at that. I've retired at the moment, but they are asking me back. The thing is with Marston, I'm definitely against bus gates going in the Ferry Link Road. And the reason's quite simple. It will turn Marston into one big car park. It'll send the cars out onto the ring road, causing more pollution, more delays for the people that have to get to the John Radcliffe Hospital, which incidentally, the main car track for that is along Marsh Lane, which is already full of traffic, along into Chilwell Drive shops, which is where the traffic lights are, which causes a load of pollution, and then up Headley Way again, which causes even more pollution, and into the John Radcliffe Hospital. And I'd like to say that I hope they have more common sense than to put a bus gate in the Ferry Link Road. Thank you.
Thank you. No. So we're going to take these three, and then we're going to come back to the panel. Yeah.
Hi, thank you. I live in East Oxford, and I've suffered as much as others here with the LTNs. The amount of time it used to take us to drive around the city and drive down the Iffley Road and get to where we needed to go has more than doubled. You've all mentioned the Westgate, and I think, it was the pride and joy. And one of the things they kept advertising about the Westgate was the 1,000 car park spaces that this Westgate was going to bring people into the city. And yet now, after having invested millions in the Westgate, they're now no longer allowing us to be able to drive to the Westgate. You mentioned buses. I have a family of 5. It costs us more to get to the city centre from halfway up the Iffley Road. I don't live all the way up. I live halfway up the Iffley Road. It costs us more for the 5 of us to get the bus into town than it does to park at the moment in town. It's ridiculous. I have school children. They should travel the city for free on the buses. Residents should be, thank you, and residents should have reduced fees. Charge tourists. We are an extreme tourist city. Charge tourists a full ticket price on the buses. Ask them to pay. That is what cities around the rest of Europe are doing. They are supporting their residents and charging others that are coming to visit the city. And that's how we should be proposing it. I think another thing that hasn't been mentioned is that while cars aren't allowed through the bus gates, HGVs will be. And as the ring road gets worse, they are going to be using the city centre to get to their businesses instead of using the ring road. So we're going to have less cars and enormous lorries going through our city centre in order to get to the deliveries. And that is terrifying as a cyclist to know that there are going to be more trucks going through these roads. Thank you.
Hello there. I wanted to actually speak to the fact that there's nobody here from the council or to speak in support of these proposals. and I'm going to take the bold step of speaking in favour of the proposals, not really to make an argument, but just from my heart. I don't really expect to win any friends here, given the current feeling in the room. But can I first ask, how many people agree with me and do support these proposals that are being put forward? Do support the proposals? So it looks like we've got one person in the room. So there's possibly 2 people in the room, or 3 people in the room. No. Oh, sorry.
Let him speak.
Sorry,
Can we let him speak? Go on,
So,
go on, make your
I
point.
was actually surprised to see that we actually had 2 other people in the room who do support the proposals. I think it's worth asking ourselves, why is that? You know, why is it that there's nobody here willing to come who does support the proposals? Because it's not as, don't shout at me, I'm just making a speech. It's not as if nobody does. I mean, I was involved in organising a meeting where we discussed these things, where we did have the councillors was largely in favour. Some of you came, I'm looking at Anne, I know Anne came. There were a number of people who opposed the proposals, but I think, you know, what we need to do is we need to be building discussion. We need to be not sort of dividing and splitting people. We need to be finding common ground and finding ways to work together. I mean, my
Okay, let him finish his point. No heckling, please. Hold on. Listen, wait a minute. We're having an open debate. Is the one? Yeah, I'm going to just stop people heckling you, right? And I'm going to bring you back. I'm chairing it, right? The point about an open discussion is that we listen to one another. It takes an enormous amount of courage to get up and argue or make a point that the rest of the room does not agree with, and we need to have more of that, not less.
I mean, I'm just a somewhat privileged old white bloke, like most people on this panel, and you know, I don't think I'm that much different to any others than you. But I mean, I'm not entirely persuaded by what I've been hearing here. The impression I'm getting is that everybody is against this. The view is that everybody is against these ideas. The council are still doing them anyway, so they must be completely balmy idiots. God knows why they're doing it. And the only explanation one can find is some sort of higher idea that we're not aware of that means they would go ahead with that. I find it hard to sort of subscribe to that view. They're not idiots. They're elected people doing a job on not particularly much money, and I've spoken to lots of people who do support these proposals, and I think it is true. It's a highly divisive issue. There are lots of people who support them, lots of people who oppose them. It's brought out the worst in everybody, and we need to be finding some common ground. And my personal feeling, if I can speak, my personal feeling is my biggest concern about this whole thing is something that has not been mentioned one single time this evening, and that is climate change. You know, we are in a climate emergency. You know, we've seen floods in Pakistan. We can.
Okay, let him finish.
It's not a separate issue.
Let him finish, please.
We need to.
Go on, finish your point.
We need to find ways to address climate change. Transport is a major cause of climate emissions. 27% of emissions come from transport. So we need to find a way to reduce these emissions. Okay, maybe...
Hold on a minute. No one else... We invited a lot of people to come and be on the panel to speak in favour of the low traffic neighbourhoods and exactly these points, and they bottled it and weren't prepared to do it, right? So I know you're not bottling it, so I'm making the point. Finish your point, let's listen. We're all adults. You're not going to collapse if you hear something that we hear every day on the TV, are you? We've heard it. So if you finish your point, sir, and then other people can speak, and that's the way we're going to do it.
And I'll finish my point, and then I'll stand in the audience and shout at all the people who next speak, or otherwise I'll just leave. You know, if you can't treat me with some respect. Climate change is a real problem. I've got a granddaughter, and I'm really concerned about her future. You know, I speak to a lot of younger people. I speak to a lot of younger people who are considering not even having children because they're so concerned about the future. You know, we do need to find a way to move away from these emissions from transport. The idea that seems to be very dominant now is what I call like motor normativity. It's that the idea that driving is the normal way to get around. I mean, I'm not going to suggest that anyone should do what I've done, but we actually gave up our car more than 25 years ago when our kids were quite small. And we don't drive at all. Well, we hire cars and we use, we do drive, of course, but we just don't have a car and we don't see driving as our main form of travel. And that means you just view the world in a slightly different way. I heard some people here offering solutions like, well, if we turned off all the traffic lights, then cars would drive smoothly. Well, then how would I then cross the road if there were no traffic lights and the cars never stopped and just went everywhere? I heard someone saying we should put cars through the middle of Christchurch Meadow. Well, that's a beautiful spot to go and walk. Why do we want to drive cars through Christchurch Meadow? Someone else said, well, let's stop the students from driving. Well, what are the students going to feel about that? Why are they less worth cause than anybody else? You know, and I just feel like we've got a lot of problems in society here. It's not just about this transport. We've got a collapsing education system, a collapsing health system, we've got rising costs, a war, energy prices, nurseries, we heard today, are just getting too expensive for anyone to be able to go back to work. We've got huge problems here, and we need to address these problems, and we're living in a more and more divided society and not considering what we're going to do about it. And I think we need to come together. There is common ground here. For instance, buses. I'm sure everyone would agree we want cheaper and better running buses. You know, we all want that.
Okay,
so let's
great.
look at that. You know, unfortunately, we've privatised the buses in this country, so we made that very difficult for ourselves. But let's think about that. Maybe we need to bring the buses back into state ownership, and then we can actually run them and control them. They could be
Great, thank you very much for your point.
But let's work for the common ground and find a solution.
Thank you very much. I've got two more here, and then we're going to come back to the panel. We're going to wrap up. If you want to say something, come up behind them, and that's it. That's going to be the lot now, and then we're going to come to the panel, and I'm going to say a few things. Yes.
Hello.
We've got to keep them relatively short now, unfortunately, but we're going to carry on informally afterwards, and we're going to carry on the discussion.
Hello, my name's Andrew Packford. I will start by just addressing the climate change and the problems that they've got in Pakistan has just been mentioned, which will lead me on to what I want to say. There's been an enormous amount of money put into Pakistan to stop the flooding, but sadly it's all been stolen. A lot of venality, which brings me on to what I believe has been the kicking off of a lot of this. It started in Belgium and was helped by Europe, European.
It's got to be quick. Sorry, I've got.
Okay, and so from there on, I believe that there's a lot of kicking that's being given to the local council by the university to try and turn Oxford, I think, into a Disneyland. They get away with planning, which has already been stated, and somebody recently said they couldn't get through a gate. They want to keep that for themselves. The university want to keep this. There always has been a town and gown in Oxford.
I've got to wrap you up now, sorry.
And I believe this is still there.
Great, thank you. We've got literally 20 seconds on each person. I'm sorry, but we're running very low on time now. Yes, next one.
Hello, my name is Alexandra Newsom. I've lived in Oxford for 42 years. I'm a council taxpayer, and my outrage is that our council is not listening to us. That's the whole problem, not it's the details of what they're doing. I've been to several meetings. I've made suggestions of what is happening in other cities like Curitiba in Brazil with the buses and the reorganisation of transport, and they just do not listen. Why am I paying my council tax for them to just throw it down the drain?
Great point. That's it. That's 30 seconds. Sorry, the next one, 30 seconds. No, don't. Max is holding the mic. We've got 30 seconds. Go for it.
If anyone doesn't think that there is a bigger organisation over this, I just ask you to Google the 15-minute cities. They are across the world. There is a current consultation going on the government website for the central bank digital currency. Go and look in Nigeria what has happened within the year of a central bank digital currency being implemented. Because of the low adoption rates, they have restricted them to 45, whatever their currency is, cash withdrawals a day. London are now asking for your identity to go into a bar under the guise of terrorism.
That's your 30 seconds. Thank you. I will speak a bit about that, though, as well. I'm going to talk a bit about that. Good points. Right, the last one. 30 seconds. Go.
Hello, just to say, some of you might know me, Professor Dolores Cahill. I'm from Tipperary, but I just wanted you to say I'm surprised that Agenda 21, the agenda for the 21st city, hasn't been mentioned. So if any of you know, there's a very easy book to read by Rosa Corey, and it's called Behind the Green Mask. It was published in 2011, and it goes through the agenda. This is from 1992 to 2099, and it's all about infringing on your rights to free speech, freedom of travel, privacy, private property, and this is the exact same thing with the testing and
Great, thank you. 30 seconds, sorry. Thank you very much. Right, before I bring the panel back in, A few things. The reason we're called together is we think that we can change things when we work together. We helped work with lots of campaigners up and down the country, and we got the vaccine mandate to get stopped. Doesn't matter what you think about vaccines, if you think they're good or bad, that wasn't the point. It was about choice, and it was about working with frontline staff, both in the NHS and the care workers that had been actually sacked. We lost over 40,000 of them. But we managed to put pressure on the government and the opposition who supported them and get that turned around, because we stood together and we did campaigns around the country. And these local campaigns that people up and down the country are now saying enough is enough. In Cambridge last week, a huge protest where they're challenging things. In Bath and the Ring of Steel, where locals and residents of business are challenging things. People are standing independent candidates, but they're also campaigning, they're lobbying, because we need to make sure that we have a strong democratic muscle. That's us, we the people, we the many and they the few. And actually, it's very inspiring to be a room full of people, but we can take good note from this. If we go out and convince some of our colleagues, our family members, our neighbours and friends to get involved in this, you'll quickly see things change. And that's why we ask people to join us at Together, as well as supporting the local campaigns, so we can keep putting pressure on the press, on elected representatives nationally, and support people locally around the country. So I would be much more optimistic in many ways about what our potential is, because in many ways, the only thing that's missing is our belief in ourselves and being able to change it. And when it comes to urban planning around transport and housing and what a city should look like, it should be about us being at the heart of that. People, what our needs are, not what the markets say, and not what someone at Davos or what someone like Ken Livingstone came up with the idea, actually, around getting rid of cars, and then gets perpetuated across C40 cities and others with people like Sadiq Khan. But it's up to us, and that means all of us, ladies and gentlemen, getting our friends, our colleagues, our neighbours, and getting them signed up and getting involved. And that's what I think we should do together. So now I'm going to go in the opposite order of how we introduce people. Obviously, there was a lot of questions and points, but if you can do a short summary. I know it's very difficult, and we're going to have a couple of minutes each because we've got to finish sharp at 9. So we're going to go to you first, Liam, and I'm going to be strict on the timing. I'm sorry, so I'm going to interrupt after 2 minutes. Go for it.
Thank you. Yeah, lots to cover there. So I'll just go with what I've written down. So Anne, who lives in Cowley, the impact on emergency services. Anne, where are you still here? Yeah, completely get it. I mean, emergency services are also consulted, and a lot of them buckle to the pressure of the councils and say they don't have any objections. Completely wrong. I know there's been lots of incidents of vandalism in the city. Don't condone that. That doesn't help the emergency services either. So please, that's not helpful. But I know the council's looking at ways to let emergency services in. You're completely right. It's the same with 20 mile an hour. They have the emergency services have certain rules of how quick they can go in a 20 mile an hour zone. So I'm sure we'll see the impact of ambulances being slowed down. There's a point about splitting the vote in Oxford. You're preaching to the converted. Richard would tell you I was not a fan of a Conservative candidate standing in the recent by-election for that exact point, and that is a certain point I'll be making with the party's central office. If we want to beat these people at the ballot box, we've got to get smarter politically and field candidates in certain areas, so completely get that. There was a mention, I don't know if anybody saw what I called the hostage video, where our dear leader of the county council and the deputy leader, he's deputy in West Oxfordshire, but he's transport at OCC, did a video to the camera, probably the worst video I've ever seen, where Duncan actually said they're not actual, in a very condescending tone, they're not actual barriers in the way, guys, just ANPR cameras that will fine you 70 quid if you drive through. So just remember that, it's not actual barriers going in the way. Jeremy, who's gone now, I think, completely right. It was a sham consultation. I'm glad the lady brought up the issue of the Westgate Centre. Slightly ironic that it was the transport plan there was approved by the county council. Now it's the county council implementing measures to reduce cars in the city centre. Go figure. Free park and ride. I've touched on it before. Absolutely, any of this money should be reinvested into free park and ride. Make an alternative transport mode to get people into the city centre. I'll keep pressing that point, and I'll make the case at the next election. The point about HGVs, absolutely spot on. I got one more point, just around the climate change. I recognise him, he's spoken to me before. This scheme, in my view, is not about climate change. It's about making money. If it was seriously about climate change, the Labour City Council would close their city centre car parks, ban the vehicles, but they won't, because it's over 7 million quid of your money that's funding their pet projects.
Thank you.
I think the problem is obviously is trying to change 100 years or more of cars, and I understand completely that we would like to make Oxford work for cyclists and people that are walking, but the approach the council are doing with it, with painting white lines on the side of roads and expecting people to feel safe, I don't see how that's going to make for a safer Oxford. I think that they, as I mentioned earlier, everything they seem to do is short term. They never seem to do it properly. Why? I mean, in Cadiz, in southern Spain, in one of the largest squares, in fact, under a couple of squares, there are huge underground car parks where people manage to get into very narrow roads, come down and manage to park within a city, and you don't see the cars. Oxford, if they'd thought bigger in the past, and I've suggested that there should have been trams going down Woodstock Road, Banbury Road, Cowley Road, electric trams that are permanently fixed, so everyone knows where they were, and that people could just hop on them, hop off them, and they shouldn't be charged. My brother was studied medicine at Sheffield, and when he was there, bus journeys cost 10p anywhere, and in that people didn't bother getting in their cars, and that there has to be another system, but it can't be this approach at the moment, suck it and see, let's destroy Oxford, let's annoy people, let's not work it through. They're just not thinking it through. It's very naive, and let's hope we can carry on applying pressure to make them think a little bit clearer.
Thank you, Clint.
If I've got one bit of advice to people, it's speak to people outside this room. I mean, I mentioned about the traffic filters. If you live on a road where traffic's going to be diverted to, tell your neighbours. If you think, if you look at your workplace and it's got more than 10 parking spaces, start asking your boss who's paying. And if they don't know, tell them. So basically, it's all this kind of things. It's work out what, find out what the policies are and then work out who to speak to. If you go shopping on the Botley Road, some of those store managers, we spoke to them, they didn't know what was going on. Have a word with the staff, have a word with the store managers saying, this is going to cut off all your custom. Do you know you're going to go bust? So basically, it's just thinking around who you can speak to and speak to them. And be a bit bold, speak to the store manager, speak to your neighbours, put it in your WhatsApp groups. Basically tell everyone, only about 5,000 people respond to the consultation out of a city of 150,000. There could have been more. Please, get your neighbours, nag them to respond to consultations. Don't give up, keep going, tell everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, and all of your points were really, really interesting. And more interesting to me was who the hell they are. And I was there, county councillor, until 2020, and now who the hell they are Labour, Lib Dem and Greens, because they want to be in power. If they don't get together and make things worse for us instead of making things better, they should leave and other councillors should take over and sort things out. Why they are hanging over? Because there was talk going around when I was county councillor about these bollards and low traffic neighbourhood. But quite a lot of speed watch, county council survey, and volume of traffic was done for nearly 2 years. But now, since this coalition government has come up, they've just put bollards everywhere in East Oxford without any evidence of how much volume of traffic is, without doing any survey. So they are not fit for governing Oxfordshire County Council. They should all resign.
Thank you. John.
So I think it was really interesting to hear the impact on people's lives, the impact on people's jobs. It's individuals who are suffering, it's businesses that are closing, it's people's lives that are really, really impacted. This is a big, big issue. We need a consensus. We need to talk to get the consensus. What's being proposed is not green. It's harming the climate. It's harming the planet. If you think this is good, why it's failing on every measure, and there's evidence to say it's failing on every measure. That's why it should stop. We need to build a consensus. It will be free transport, or it will be some restrictions in some places that people might not like, But we can get to a consensus if we listen to each other and if we are prepared to compromise. And that's something that the council are not doing. They're not tweaking. They're not compromising. We have to carry on the campaign, though, because if we don't, this will just go in by boredom and people just feeling it's going to go away and there's no election for 2 years, and then people will not vote Conservative because they hate them so much. You know, it'll be that sort of, and go back to your own tribal ways. That's what they're hoping will happen. But we've got to stop that with evidence, with work, with sharing emails, with joining other people. This can be another poll tax because it's happening everywhere and it's against what people want, and it's not green, it's not climate supporting, it's climate harming.
Right. Just to say that in the Littlemore election, Michael Evans got 1,046 votes and the winning candidate got 1,129. It was 123 votes difference. That was also with the little shenanigans that went on with the flyer and the police situation, which delayed things for a few days. And what that really demonstrates is, with 50 or 60 candidates, people from Labour coming in, and Annalise Dodds and others getting involved as well, is that when already people are very upset, and if enough people get out and convince friends and neighbours and work colleagues, this can be won. This is not actually entirely about a consensus. This is about a majority. And this is about, you know, usually only a few hundred people vote for local councillors. This is about the fight of our lives, ladies and gentlemen. This is about, do we want to have so-called smart cities where everything we've done is being monitored, being regulated, being surveyed, where our privacy disappears and our choice and our freedom? Because a war on cars is a war on our independence and a war on our freedoms. When do we ever negotiate our mobility, our ability to make these choices? Some people think, these technocrats, which come in all colours politically, that's why so many people are politically homeless. Some technocrats seem to think they're the great and the good, and they're not so much that they're somewhere else in another country. They do go and meet there sometimes, but they're the ones in our own country, and we have to draw a line in the sand now, and we have to say we're not going to have it anymore, and it's going to be about our needs, our interests, and we do have to talk to one another, and we have to listen, and we have to win over people with hearts and minds. That means we have to have free speech, we have to stop the suffocation, the censorship and the smearing, and we have to have ideas and win people to that. So I'd encourage everyone to get involved with Reconnecting Oxford. They've done remarkable work up until now. I want to thank Suki, who's done some great work with helping us behind. I want to thank Ray and the people at the venue. I want to thank the panel, and could you give them a big warm round of applause, please? But I also want to say to you and everyone at home watching now and that will be watching afterwards, that this is the moment. This is a battle that's now being taken up by everyone across the UK. We've got people in streets across the 31 boroughs in London and up and down the country. And when we talk about uniting people, that's what we're doing. We're doing a London-wide anti-low traffic neighbourhood campaign. We're doing an anti-ULEZ campaign. Very soon you're going to see something this weekend, something else that's going to be challenging the Mayor of London, who thinks he's got the right, like these other technocrats, to impose without discussion, like Oxfordshire County Council and like some at the City Council, who think they're the great and the good. They know what we need. They can just nudge, impose and obfuscate, and we're not going to have it anymore, and we're going to do a nationwide challenge, and that's what's happening now. So I'd encourage anyone who's not a member to join as a member of Together, to join up and sign up. And it might be that you don't get emails, but we also do stuff with the news, on socials, and in hard copy with flyers up and down the country with people. And if we haven't got to enough people, I can only apologise, but that's why we want everyone else to become a network for us. Stay around afterwards to carry on the discussion further. And the final point is this: if you want to take some of these away and put them in the windows or take them to the next challenge or protest, please do. We'd love to get a donation because they cost money. At the back, you'll see Max and the guys with buckets. So if you want to chuck in a bit, bring some, take them home, and you can have a bit of a chat with us afterwards. And thank you everyone for joining us around the world. This is Together, Reconnecting Oxford. Free our streets, take back democracy together.